reproductive rights are under assault in the United States. And what's worse, the rationale put forth by the Supreme Court to justify rolling back nearly 50 years of precedent that there's no implicit right to privacy in the Constitution lays the groundwork for a full court press on a host of other settled cases. Deep Listens is taking action, and we need your help. Of course, we want you to learn about the elected officials in your area and vote in every single election, but we'd like you to consider contributing to the national network of abortion funds as well. The NNAB is a clearinghouse of regional abortion and reproductive health organizations across the United States. Their goal is to remove financial and logistical barriers to abortion access, centering on those looking for assistance and organizing at the intersection of racial, economic, and reproductive justice. You can contribute to the NNAB directly at abortionfunds.org/donate. You can also use their site to locate an abortion fund in your area so you can keep your money local and aid your neighbors. Thank you, and now back to your regularly scheduled podcast. Hello, good people. Welcome to Off the Deep End, a Deep Listens podcast where we plumb the depths of role-playing video games in depth. My name is Jeff Rude. I am the host and the slalom of this operation. Joining us once again, as always, we have the very personification of anticipation itself. It's Chris Zombie Pyrodacted. Hello, Chris.
Hello, Jeff. To commemorate your life, just want to remind you, don't be such a Mount Royale pain in the ass.
Ho, 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 ho. Also joining us, and kind of, the reason for the season here, he is the taboo, the sixth sense of the operation. It's Braden, Arbitrary Water Redacted. Hello, Braden.
Hello. I'm here to subject you and the audience at home to the weird brain worm that I've been dealing with for, let's say, about 4 years.
You're having a fundy time.
I'm very excited about this brain worm. In case you didn't notice by the name of all these rare games that I listed out, that's because on this episode we'll be discussing Wizards and Warriors.
Yeah.
Wizards and Warriors, it was developed by Rare Limited, formerly Ultimate Play the Game, and it was published by Acclaim. It was originally released for the NES in December 1987. We were not very good at putting specific dates on the US releases. It was released subsequently in Japan and the European Union, I believe, or the European Economic Collective, or whatever it was called prior to the Lisbon Agreement, or whatever it was called that made
Against the wishes of Margaret Thatcher, but yes.
Yes, rolling, screaming in her grave. Yeah, John Major really sold that country up a river. So that's not what we did. What we did was we played its bizarre, identically named brother, down to the ampersand Wizards and Warriors.
A video game that does not have anything to do with aforementioned Wizards and Warriors other than the name.
Yes, we cannot emphasize this enough. This is beyond the most basic of fantasy trappings, of medieval Euro fantasy trappings, nothing else in common. Wizards and Warriors bracket 2000 close bracket. This is a game that was developed by Heuristic Park, those purveyors of quality, and published by Activision, also purveyors of quality. It was first released, and by first I mean only, released on the 27th of September in the year 2000, in the millennium.
Wow, Jeff, what if I told you a video game came out on September 20th, 2000, called Baldur's Gate 2?
Which makes this game look very silly.
Which is why you have not heard of this game.
Yeah, it's sort of like an eclipse of sorts occurred. An occultation. And this was occulted. Yes, we will get into all manner of talk about Wizards and Warriors very soon. But first, I have to get through the rest of the preamble, which is, hey, if you'd like to be a part of pre-show discussions about Wizards and Warriors, really either version, but I'd prefer the latter, you can do that by joining the Deep Listens fan community of cool, interesting internet people. That can be accomplished by going to patreon.com/deeplistens. Kicking in any dollar amount to the Deep Listens Patreon will get you access to a Discord where we are all hanging out, cracking wise, talking about Bernie Sanders not knowing how to use the subway and various other contemporary political goings-on in the continental United States, just all the time. You can also send inquiries to us via electronic mail. For the time being, you can still do that at inquiries@deep.lol. You can also send them to questions@deeplistenspod. No, wait. deeplistenspod@gmail.com? I forget. Inquiries@deep.lol is incredibly the more reliable way to do that right now, because I don't remember basic information about our operations because my brain was replaced by just some rocks from my yard recently. If you'd like to see the fruits of our labors, we do keep them on a list. That is at bit.ly/OTDE rank. And finally, and this is perhaps the most important bit, pledging at the $3 a month amount will allow you to recommend an RPG for us to put onto the slush pile from which we do draw. And I believe we will be drawing relatively soon. We're getting to the end of the year. You should hopefully be hearing this very soon. That will be followed by something special, which will be probably followed by a Game of the Year recording that we will be doing. So the slush pile will be on the back burner for a minute, but we'll be pulling from it again. That's the hot plan. What do you think of the hot plan, guys?
I think that's a hot plan.
Is it burning up like the planet?
A hot planet on the back burner.
In the Midwest, they make hot plan.
In Mexico, they make hot flan. In Soviet Russia, flan make you. Anyway,
I'm not the biggest flan fan, but okay.
I'm not a big flanman.
Braden, who the hell's Heuristic Park?
Well,
wow,
Jeff, Heuristic Park were a developer founded by one David W. Bradley in 1995 to make role-playing video games.
David
They made
W.
two.
Wait a minute. That's the Surtech guy.
That's the Surtekman.
What happened?
What happened? Okay, so I actually refreshed my memory on this. David W. Bradley, D.W. Bradley to the fans, to the kids, was a programmer, hobbyist game developer who at one point sent Surtech a video game he had made himself that they were like, damn, son, this is super good. What if you worked for us and put it out as Wizardry 5? So I guess that's kind of how he got into making the Wizardry, is literally he sent them a game and then he became the Wizardry man for like 4 years.
Yeah, it's important to also realize that two of the previous figureheads of Wizardry and Surtech had left. They are Robert Woodhead and also Andrew C. Greenberg.
Yes.
They left in large part because the person running Surtech was screwing them over.
On money, yes.
And partly because they money issues, David W. Bradley was basically tapped to fill the void that these two figureheads, probably at this point, two of the most well-known figures in the computer role-playing game industry, short of, like, I don't know, Sir Ultima or Lord British, I should say. Robert Woodhead leaving Surtech was a big deal at the time. A very big deal.
You can find stuff about that in like in the hobbyist magazines of the era.
And we should I guess this is slightly related, but during the development of the 7th game of Wizardry, like, Bradley was actually named in the lawsuit filed by Woodhead and Greenberg against Surtech over royalties. So let's just say, while Bradley eventually was declared uninvolved because he was just, the guy tapped for that position. There might still be a little bit of bad blood between the old guard and, D.W. Bradley's tenure with the Wizardry franchise.
But basically, there is a pretty clear gap in Wizardry as a series, at least, the original American-made Wizardry games. And D.W. Bradley is that fulcrum because he made 5, 6, and 7, and 6 and 7 especially are very ambitious. Maybe we'll play them someday. Wizardry 7 is crazy. It's very hard.
Well, are we talking Wizardry 7 or are we talking Gold? Because Wizardry Gold is kind of like its own little thing, even though it's basically 7.
It's 7 with voice acting and more bugs.
Yeah.
But I think the thing to talk about here is, Wizardry 6 and 7 are very important games for this genre at that time in the early 90s, late 80s. And then because Surtech was a poorly run company,
kind of from the jump,
that
really
continually antagonized its talent. If you want to read into like some of the stuff around the Wizardry 7 sequel that was never made.
Every single interview of Robert Woodhead, like even the last 20 years, he has nothing to say positive about Robert or Norman Surotech. Like, no one liked those guys. They were colossal jerks in terms of compensating the people who actually made their business even possible. Like, even members of the Jagged Alliance team don't like the Surotechs. Yeah, so Surtech was not a well-run company. If you want to look into stuff around, Wizardry Stones of Arnheim, which was basically the unfinished sequel to Wizardry 7 that was like something of an urban legend before people actually found proof it existed. But anyway, so after being at Origin for a bit to work on a game called Cyber Mage Dark Light Awakening, which maybe we'll have to play it based on that name alone. I am unfamiliar with this game at all. He founded Heuristic Park and made Wizards and Warriors, or previously known as Deep Six, and then known as Swords and Sorcery.
How did he?
And then finally
back to Wizards and Warriors.
Went to Wizards and Warriors. And there was a lot of let's say publisher back and forth. The game was originally slated to come out in mid '98.
Okay, that
so
that bit alone makes a lot of this game make a lot more sense.
Yes, and it was going to be published by Virgin Interactive, who were also who owned Westwood at the time, and then EA bought all of that, and EA was not interested in publishing Wizards and Warriors.
I wonder why.
And then eventually Activision picked it up, and so this game came out of nowhere.
Yep.
Came out at the worst possible time to release a game of that type, and has languished in relative obscurity ever since, because it is, until the GOG release, which was in 2019, basically impossible to run on OSs newer than Windows 2000.
And also, if you're banking on D.W. Bradley's name value, so basically Wizardry 7 comes out, and I would say Wizardry 7 was a very popular game. That game made money, and he jumps over to EA to make Cyber Mage, and then goes back to Surtech to make Wizardry Gold, and then leaves to make this game. And publishing kerfuffles aside, like,
I don't think he came back for Wizardry Gold. I think he was credited.
Okay, sure.
That game is just.
But nonetheless, this game, and we're going to talk about why this game had a very long production cycle. Nonetheless, the name cachet of D.W. Bradley is basically lost its luster. Now, I know that Braden has mentioned that this was pitted up against Baldur's Gate. It's also important to know that Wizardry 8 is going to come out about a year after this game, and is already going through a hype cycle. And let's say that the audience for this game knows that the real one is just right around the corner on top of that.
There was, if you go back to, the forums and news groups and boards of the time, you can see like weird amounts of back and forth between RPG fans over which is the real Wizardry 8, because people don't change.
Someone's on there arguing that they don't need any of these games because Ultima 9 already came out, and like, why would you even play games after that, you know?
Yeah. So, this game has had an interesting trajectory, but what is it? Jeff, I want you to explain this game to me.
Sure. I'm going to explain it in the style of a bad faith asshole. So it is a fun marriage of... Okay, I have two possible responses to this. It is D.W. Bradley saw Quake, but he only played it with a keyboard, so the Z-Look was still mounted to, like, page up and page down, and he was like, aha, this is it. This is what is needed. The other bad faith fusion I was just going to say is it's basically a weird combination of Etrian Odyssey and Quake, which is also a bad way to describe it. This is a 3D dungeon crawler in the blobber mold, a la Wizardry. It has many, many, many Wizardry-esque bones, but it is the presentation stuff and the veritable litany of bugs that this game kind of shipped with that I didn't experience a ton of them, but just poking around what I read about, that kind of come to define the Wizards and Warriors experience. Right from the jump, this game does some things that reveal its hand in a way that made me feel very cozy, that feels very at home, and is also going to drive away, I don't know, 95% of the people that want to try this out. But I won't lie, I think this game's actually kind of alright. If you can get down on a sort of classic dungeon crawl and are willing to kind of wade through some old PC stuff, you could have probably played this game prior to 2019 and had an okay time. And that was before GOG decided to put out a version that just kind of works on modern operating systems. That seems to be the fully patched version of the game.
So I think they had to do some work to get it to run on a modern OS, which is uncommon for GOG games these days. But yeah, before this re-release, you had to goof around with compatibility settings, install no less than 2 different unofficial patches.
And then even like Hardcore Gaming 101 advised that you should recompress the FMVs if you wanted the cutscenes not to break, which is insane, right? Like that's well beyond that.
This game is held together with a certain type of good intention.
It's also locked at 60 frames per second for a reason, let's just say. We'll talk about like the speed and like the weird stuff with the background and foreground stuff, but it's something that I think at the time there was a weird glitch where it would detect frames per second as your refresh rate before the GOG release, which is always my favorite glitch and bug in any game whatsoever. So this game was kind of in the pantheon of classic CRPGs of an era that it was considered one of the hardest things to run on modern technology for a lot of reasons. And like Braden was saying, like part of this is this game from a purely technical perspective, when you look at what this game is trying to do in the era that it inhabited, like there was just nothing like this. Baldur's Gate and the old engines that BioWare were making were not this technically ambitious in terms of being a fully 3D rendered game.
Might and Magic 6, which is the closest to this game, Might and Magic 6, 7, and 8, are not nearly as... those games are 2D sprites in 3D environments. This game is fully polygonal in a fully 3D space.
Even the town, like the little, let's call it the mosaics that are sort of the towns in this game, they look so cool.
They do.
God, this game looks so awesome. Like, in a very specific like late 90s like PC graphics way. To be clear, this isn't I would hesitate to call this game good by the standards of its day. Like, go look at, for some reason, like Deus Ex is what comes to mind when I think of like incredible looking PC game from like 1999.
There is an element of like the immersive sim that is in this game.
Yeah.
Like in terms of scope and sequence, like this game has an immersive sim quality to it because it just basically opens up. And again, we'll get to the game later. It opens up and it's like, go. I'm not telling you anything. Go. Do as you want. Figure it out the hard way. Maybe you've got the feelies.
That is just Wizardry, though, in a sense. Like, that
Absolutely.
is kind of how those games worked.
And again, like...
you can see the line from Wizardry 7 to this. The difference is this game, and I've used this analogy before, this game is a failed evolutionary branch of the CRPG. It is a weird vestigial, like, ancient badger or something. It's the Neanderthal.
So, I mean, looking at this game, yeah. I mean, like the Aurora engine with BioWare just was not designed to be fully 3D, and most people didn't want to take the plunge in the classic CRPG, or no, it was Infinity Engine, sorry. Most didn't want to do this. Wizardry does get there with Wizardry 8, but again, this game predates it by at least a year, a few years even, if you calculate by... No, but I'm just talking about when D.W. Bradley started development versus, say, Wizardry 8. Yeah. So, I mean, you got to give them credit for trying, like what they did. And then we haven't even talked about the fact...
16 people.
16 people, and with voice acting. The voice acting's not the best, but it's not terrible. So production-wise, I think that like playing this game and realizing that you're playing something from the late 90s that released in the early 2000s, like that's the best part, is like kind of putting yourself in the shoes of the people who were making this game. The act of playing this game is when I also didn't have the worst time with this game. I just think that it is incomprehensible at times. It's just, and I realize that a lot of that is like the old school approach to CRPG design, but like even during this time, like Wizardry was starting to sand off the edges. And so to see a game just fully commit to the old school approach kind of warmed my heart.
Yes, the old school approach while also being fully 3D and existing in a 3D space.
Yeah, with immersive simmy, like the first time this game had me like pick up swords and axes from the ground.
Worry about encumbrance, depending on your race, right?
But like the swords are fully rendered. They're not like
it's not the notion of a sword. It's not the word sword.
Sprite. No, they 3D modeled the sword, and the enemy drops that when you kill them.
And to be clear, everyone in our audience is already playing this game or has like very specific intentions to go out and buy it, because it is, as we mentioned, available on GOG right now for $5.99 US. But just in the off chance you don't, to be super clear, this is a world that is rendered in 3D with polygonal objects. That world lives in a window of a user interface. So take, your standard 1280 by 1024 or whatever, like very high-end PC monitor of the day. I think this is like a 1024 by 768 game. 640 by 480, whatever resolution this game runs. Now hack up, 30% of that, 40% of that into what is actually rendering, and the rest of this is just UI, kind of splattered around the sides.
Highest resolution is 1024 768.
Okay, so it's 1020. Not bad. So the 3D is occurring in a window. This is not like a full, again, Deus Ex, Half-Life, a little more impressive. As mentioned, take that, draw a word picture, if you will, and then play Wizardry inside of it, but with this kind of immersive simmy. That's kind of describing the game.
I do want to say, like, the first thing that took me by surprise, other than, we'll talk about character creation, is the fact that it's not fully real time and it's not completely the classic turn-based Wizardry style. It's a mixture of both.
It is a kludgy real time with pause, kind of.
That's the coolest part of this game, and I think I've been talking to Braden about it. Like the fact that it's like trying to do something fundamentally different from the field in that regard is cool, right? It's different.
It's accidentally like super hot.
I really like
Because so in Might and Magic 6, it's a toggle, right? It's a toggle between real time and turn based. In this game, the way it works, I believe, is as soon as you stop moving, it becomes a soft turn based combat system. But until that point, and also enemy projectiles are physical objects in the world that you can sidestep.
Yep.
bobbing Wizards and War.
Yeah, projectiles and ranged weapon
It's
ammunition
bananas.
has real-time tracking in a game that doesn't normally have that. Game genre that normally doesn't have that. It's just if you shoot an arrow at a person, it just rolls to see if it hits, depending on whether or not you want to calculate armor class or it's just a raw dice roll, depending on a stat attribute that you connect to it. Oh, also, let's talk about character creation in this game because, boy, howdy.
Yeah, so I did, I followed my heart and I just set 3 meat shields up front and then put spicy stuff in the back row. How clever am I? Fancy RPG people who know about strategy and good think.
Well, Jeff, do you like class trees?
I love class trees.
What if, because this game sure does take kind of the same approach as Wizardry 7 in that you can, if you have the appropriate stats, you can change into an advanced class with different skills and abilities, and once you eventually out-level your first class with your second one, you get all of your abilities back, and so you are slowly building your characters towards either Gestalt hybrids or like hyper specialized super mages.
So that's great.
So
you've
got Wizard, Warrior, Thief, Priest.
Yeah,
as
it's
your
a weird
starting
amalgam
classes.
of your normal standbys in a fantasy RPG. You also have, let's say, token-inspired and token-light races. So I went with a dwarf fighter, whiskus fighter, human fighter, gnome rogue, Oompah's priest. That's the elephant man, and then a pixie wizard. I think my biggest regret was going with 4 physical classes and only 2 magic casters, which I feel like we'll talk about the weird hit rate problems you can encounter with this game. But yeah, it is. I kind of regretted that. I think the thing that, as someone who has played Wizardry 7 and Wizardry Gold, I kind of realized that the characters that I created in Wizardry work just as well in Wizards and Warriors. So if you had, let's say, a certain party configuration that you like in Wizardry 7, you basically can roll that here. I mean, the monks and the ninjas in Wizardry 7, they're just as powerful here. And so I have to imagine that maybe D.W. Bradley's predisposition for certain classes and build paths in Wizardry 7 influenced his kind of specialization classes in this game. So yeah, the starting basic classes are Warrior, Rogue, Priest, Wizard. The elite classes are Barbarian, Bard, Monk, Ninja, Paladin, Ranger, Samurai, Warlock. And then the special classes are Assassin, Valkyrie, and Zen Master. The special classes, I think, only become available to
pretty late game.
Yeah,
late game,
and
you only get one of each.
You only get one of each. You have to talk to also a very specific character to unlock them.
Yeah, they're very quest oriented.
Which again, this is genre appropriate. The idea of like you have to talk to someone and complete a quest to get this is very appropriate. We kind of had that with Might and Magic. I think the difference here is that for the quests of the elite classes, especially, it's a little bit more involved than what I think most people are used to.
The promotion quests.
The promotion quests. Not only that, Braden, but you also need to pay to join a guild. And
you have
so
to pay to join a guild. You have to pay to get the training. Yeah.
What ends up being the biggest barrier to your character progress in this game ends up being, do you have enough gold to just get the elite classes and the class specializations that you want? Which is not a huge problem. I actually thought that, putting points into stat attributes, the different classes have their specializations. For example, a warrior can do all weaponry and specialize in athletics and leadership. And like the wizard can only do daggers, poles, and staffs, but gets stonecraft, suncraft, and sorcery. I think the weird specializations of the types of magic and the kind of like magic wheel that it has is very much inspired by Wizardry and Ultima. I feel like something that I felt as I was progressing my classes is this definitely feels like something where you were supposed to have a manual to like refer back to, especially 100%. When you're like when you're like, okay, so I want to turn this warrior into a barbarian. Like, so what are the minimum attributes? Oh, the game doesn't have it. I guess I have to look it up. Guess I gotta like, where's the guild to do this? Oh, it's one of two guilds. It's either the Three Swords Guild to get a barbarian or the Guild of Shadow. So there's like overlapping guilds that do different classes. But yeah, it's I didn't hate it. It's just, let's just say that CRPGs of this time were not interested in holding your hand, like at all. Yeah. At all.
This has like the simultaneous problems, I guess, let's say, of it not particularly interested in holding your hand, like generally just expects you to be reading the manual. It's a game for people who enjoy reading, and also just kind of smacks a little bit of like D.W. Bradley kind of made a game for himself a little bit, just a bit.
I think he said as much in interviews. He said we're all RPG fans, so we're making a game that we would want to play.
Yeah,
and you can tell.
Yeah, and that's not necessarily the worst thing. Like, I've been making hay about Starfield a little bit over the last couple months as being kind of a thing that I think the people at Bethesda were very excited to make for themselves. That seems to kind of have worked out. Like, I don't know. There's a constituency for kind of everything that seemed to seek it out. I'm curious how much of the insane Bradley versus Wizardry people glommed onto this.
There is a bit of a divide between the old graybeard Wizardry fans. Like, are you a Greenberg Woodhead fan, or are you a D.W. Bradley fan? And Wizardry 8 is its own thing. That's where we get into like the people who don't like Brenda Romero's creative decision making, or like Linda Curry's creative decision making with 8. But I like 8. Braden likes 8.
I like 8.
But yeah, there is a bit of a divide in terms of D.W. Bradley's approach to CRPG hallmarks versus like the old school people. And let's say it's still a little bit fraught. I think that, I don't want to dwell too much on it. I think it is very telling that D.W. Bradley makes this game and then makes one more game and then basically nopes out of the industry because he saw that the industry was going in a different direction. And basically CRPGs died for about 10 years.
Yeah, they've at the very least, they became something very, very, very different.
But
for the next 10 years.
I've luckily not played that game that came after Wizards and Warriors, and I don't think Jeff has
Dungeon
either.
Lords.
Hey, what's your thoughts about Dungeon Lords, Braden?
Dungeon Lords is one of the weirdest, most fucked up games I've played on stream.
It's like, if you wanted to talk about how like it's kind of quaint that they made a 3D blobber.
To encapsulate what Dungeon Lords is. Dungeon Lords is Bradley looking at Wizards and Warriors and deciding, okay, but what if this was an MMO? Huh. But then the MMO part failed. So it is instead this weird CRPG that is kind of just Diablo in the corpse of a not MMO, but with the same level of like handcrafted and bespoke quest and dungeon design.
It's weird to think, but remember that weird era where maybe World of Warcraft was the only CRPG being played by most people? Yeah, that's what Dungeon Lords was pulling from.
Wow.
Okay, to brass tacks. I made it as far as Ishad Na.
Yeah.
I completed the Serpent Temple, and then when I completed the Serpent Temple, it's like, boy, man, all of these dungeons sure are super big. There's only like 4 of them, but they all feel super overwhelming. I don't think I have it in me to do another one.
So I think that's the other big differentiator of this game is the world in this game I would not say is huge. It's separated into 3 it's kind of neatly separated into 3 different maps and with towns between them. I have never gotten to the 3rd map because
I got to the 2nd one, and
yeah.
it was that's where I drew the line to, Braden. So you're not alone.
Because but the opening area, the opening dungeon and kind of the opening area, the Nymph Lake area and the Crypt dungeon, I feel like are a perfect encapsulation of this game having a very quality over quantity approach to designing environments and encounters. But also it's a game where instead of random encounters, enemies will just spawn sometimes and appear in front of you in real time because it's that kind of game.
And I have to say,
and you can toggle how frequent you want that to happen.
Yeah, the fact that there is a toggle for the random encounter rate in this game is a merciful gimme to the player that I was not expecting at all. Because, I'm just going to say it.
How weird the rest of this is.
Yeah, how weird the rest of this game is, and also how, let's say, kick your teeth in and learn the hard way the formatting of this game can be at times. I was shocked to see that slight gimme. But I want to say that I think that the first world and the first dungeon are kind of a perfect encapsulation of what the highest of highs this game will provide. It also has some pretty big lows. But I think that if you're wondering, man, is this the game for me? Is this game worth it? Playing that first dungeon is kind of going to give you a good idea of what this game's best shot is. And it's a lot of spelunking, some really, really ill-conceived puzzling, and like lever puzzle stuff, some very interesting character interactions here and there. And let's just say a team that really thought highly of their own ability to create this lore Bible. And, how much of that is going to carry the experience? It's up to you to tell me, not me to tell you.
We have to talk about, I guess, the very beginning. There's a character creation that you go through. We all have already.
You make 6 characters.
You make 6 characters. There are multiple races and classes, and that's all very neat. And then you are greeted by about a 12-frame loop of an old man waving his arms.
My God.
And lore dumping you for what feels like, in practical terms, probably about 2-3 minutes. In temporal, how it felt to me terms, feels like half an hour. It is a rough way to kick off your game, but also was maybe the most, all right, I see you, Wizards and Warriors. I see what you're doing. It's the most, maybe you don't need the manual after all thing this game does, because it's like, this guy pretty well lays out, like, here's what you might consider doing here to begin your adventure in the Wizards and Warriors world of Warriors and Wizards. And it looks and sounds like but by golly, what great shit.
It doesn't look good. Like, it feels like there's a weird chroma key error with the animating 3D characters with the 2D backgrounds.
Yeah, it's something between a chroma key and like that character is animating and was captured at a lower resolution than the background art behind him. In a way that like a scaled sprite can kind of look occasionally. I just loved it. I just loved it. As soon as it started, I was just like, this, like Gino's running for the hills as this is happening, and I'm just sitting in my seat clapping like Aerith in like 7 Remake. I'm like, yes.
Yes.
Do the thing.
You're also, we also have to mention that as you're exploring, let's say, the story required environments and parts of this game, you find out that there's an omniscient narrator who this is how the game makes it feel like you're playing a role-playing game, like a tabletop role-playing game, where there's almost this dungeon master narrating the major moments of your, I'm saying major in quotations, I must specify, the major moments of your story. Sometimes it literally is, you opened a door and found nothing but cockroaches and rats, to, hey, you encountered a talking mummy who's laying out this entire story. He's a legendary person and an ultimate evil figure that you probably need to kill. Oh no! I've been trying to look up who is that narrator, because boy, he feels like he was consuming, let's say, some libations while recording his lines.
Maybe doesn't do this for a living.
Yeah.
But yeah, as soon as this animated individual leaves, you are more or less thrown to the wolves.
And not only that, but like, you need to spend your money. Like,
Yes.
You get a basic starting income, which, this is maybe the weirdest, most annoying choice in the game. The income is shared across characters, and you need to constantly repool it
Yeah.
to kind of like be able to make individual purchases, realistic individual purposes. It starts you with characters that are basically naked, and if you go out before you buy your resources, you're just gonna die. You're probably just gonna die.
Just going to die. Yeah, the money part, I understand why you wind up doing something like that, I suppose. But the net effect is just a pain in the ass, because what you wind up doing is just shuffling a stack of money between 6 characters anyway, like over and over again.
Would it surprise you to know that this game originally had a multiplayer component?
Okay.
Which is why some of the, like, each character has their own gold aspects are in this game.
I mean, that
Because I think
makes a lot more sense.
the original idea was literally you and other players are controlling characters in the same party. I don't know how that would have worked, and clearly they didn't either.
It sounds like a very like Charlie's Angel playing Final Fantasy, and they're showing it off like a multiplayer game. Like, I don't know how to
Yes.
actually imagine this. Fine. But what I do want to say is, like, you kind of basically have to figure out what these character classes that you've picked, what their whole deal is in like a minimal amount of time. And if you don't, you're just going to die. And if you do, you're going to have to like get to a part of the world that they don't even kind of really signpost all of that good. Well, like, yeah, sure. Like Jeff said, that first guy kind of lays out, you should probably kill some skeletons. Oh, by the skeletons, you're going to meet a guy who will then cascade into this next quest, which will then cascade into the next story piece after that, which unlocks the map too. But this game doesn't really compose all of its different plot threads into a coherent way. Like, there's not really, and well, there kind of is a mission log, but it is tucked away. It is not easy to find anything that are like the feelies in this game. And also, with this being a fairly, let's say, open world, it has like a weird fill in the map sensibility to it. But boy, man, the map in this game's not the best.
Yeah, it's just kind of bad. I don't know. Like, what? I don't know. Braden, like, how did you feel about the map system in this game?
So
Because like it's not, it's like the world, I think the thing working in its favor is the world is relatively small, right? And there are signposts, like literal signposts all over the place.
and
right?
designed like it was on a grid, right?
Yeah.
And weirdly enough, there's not a ton of great documentation on this game.
Huh.
I know, crazy.
Ganter for
Are certain parts of this game procedurally generated like
No.
Daggerfall? Because
No, this is all
Really?
handcrafted.
it's small enough that you could have done that realistically. I think it would need to be quite a bit larger. It does have like a very, for the time, if you like squint and accept kind of organic feel to like the landscape kind of undulates. It is also very like, it is artificial in the way that's like there are walls around the corridors that constitute the quote-unquote swamp and forest you are. That's just like tree texture .png. That's just stretched,
And I guess the other thing that starts to get a bit hard is parsing out what you're looking at and knowing when you're filling things in. Like if you fill in the map, that's actually worse. That's one of the worst experiences you can have is I filled in the map. I don't know where to go. Shoot. Everything looks the same. Guess I gotta try and find a lever that opens a hidden passage or an invisible wall. But yeah, at least the start of this game, I mean, the weird spawn rate aside, this game starts in a kind of like a sandbox, but it's a very guided sandbox. There's basically two paths for you to take. One leads you one way, the other leads you the other way. So either you end up in a windmill and talk to a guy, or you end up in the graveyard with a bunch of skeletons. And yeah, there are quests that you can pick up along the way and NPCs you can interact with. There's that weird thief dude who gets killed by his party members when they realize that they're in trouble because of his ass. And then, like when you go to the second map, there's like the weird fortune teller and the frog people. It's a world that's really trying to do some stuff. And when you get into that first dungeon, I feel like things start to kind of come together in terms of the game lays out its cards.
Sure does. Just weird, bespoke dungeon design. There are NPCs on the map, on the world map, and you talk to them with a text parser, which is very Wizardry 7. And there's very good voice acting that definitely doesn't sound like me when I am doing voices for my D&D group. There's a guy who really likes rats, and he
wants to eat that rat pie that you can pick up from his brother, right?
Yeah, you can get a rat pie from his brother, and then if you give him the rat pie, he tells you how to solve one of the puzzles in the crypt. And if you don't, you just kind of have to figure it out.
I like parsers because I was a Sierra kid. I was not a LucasArts kid. However, needing to go through all of your parser options whenever you're interacting with a quest giver or a major story character kind of sucks in this game because boy howdy do things slow to a crawl.
And it's fully voiced and it's unskippable.
And every line of dialogue you encounter is just the most verbose, wordy thing ever.
And it's great.
It's good, but it's also
charming.
just, oh boy, it's a lot.
Yeah, the D&D thing I think is very apt. It is, yeah. You are very fond of your lore Bible and very confident in your lore Bible if you're going to show it to me this enthusiastically, as opposed to letting me do the thing that I don't think this is like a millennial like Zoomer issue. I think this is a normal like broad RPG thing of like just give me the very first quest in this game amounts to like the mayor in the town hall says, "Hey, bring me some skulls. I will pay you for 5 skulls." I think it's 5 or 10 or some nomination of skulls. You could just give me that, that you could give me a line. I don't need a reason to acquire skulls for you. And yet, there is one. And I suppose that's nice if you want it. I would say the storytelling in this game is not its strong suite by any stretch of the imagination. I think the strong point of this game is, in a sense, like the systems part of it. Like,
yes,
there's a surprising amount. I guess it's not that surprising if you're like, oh, right, it's the Wizardry dude, or the latter-day Wizardry dude. But yeah, as you mentioned, Gestalt classes, skill trees, stuff that's like sounds kind of like ho-hum, like who gives a rip, whatever.
There are 6 different schools of magic.
And I think you select 1 or 2 at the jump, and there's pools of spells for each one of those.
And wizards each start with 2, and then there are 2 more that only the advanced classes get.
Right.
And it's all once again Wizardry-esque spell design, although
Advancing Magic, it's back. Jeff?
It's
you
not
happy?
fancy.
no, I mean,
It's kind of
There's-
fancy.
It's not fancy. You
yeah,
have spell
it's actually
points.
not man. Yeah, it's all mana-ish.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, that's kind of, I guess, well, either way you run up into that, and there's like, there's classic, quadratic wizard, linear warrior shit going on here.
It helped. Well, even early on, magic spells always hit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I found that to be very, very helpful, even in the early stages of the game, because, boy, I sure did miss a lot at the start of the game with my martial classes.
The early part of my game was basically 3 martial classes whiffing while the wizard throws as many fireballs as they can until they run out of goo. And that is all on a limiter, which is my priest being able to heal the meat shields in front. Once, as long as that machine can roll, I can be out in the wilderness and spelunking for a time. As soon as you run out of juice in either one or both of those, it's back to tutorial town for me.
You know what? I will say that there is
your
a
wizards
bit of
also regenerate mana
Yeah,
pretty quickly.
They do.
your wizards do regenerate mana, which again is a gimme. I was surprised to see this because it was a welcome change of pace. Because boy,
There's
have been
not a
lot.
rest button.
There's no rest button, so you just get everything back. That feels oddly progressive to a certain degree. Let's just say.
In a post-Diablo world, you almost kind of have to do that, I guess. Like,
And there, and visually, like what this world is filled with is just bizarre. There's like monkey men. There's a lot of skeletons. There's a lot of titties. Like the nymphs and most of the female characters that are not humans are naked. There's trolls. There's giant spiders. And there's just
lizard
a lot of
men who have
there's toad
weird
men.
accents that are unplaceable, but undoubtedly racist.
Yeah. It's just a lot of stuff that they filled this world in, and it's very tactical. There's a lot of tactical options that you need to think about, and it pretty much just boils down to fight, spell, parry, move on, like the good old days of Wizardry, right?
It is a dungeon crawler. You crawl through the dungeon.
But it does become a formula.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
on top of that, like this game gives you the option of like not necessarily respecking, but like recomposing new characters at that inn. You can create new characters. Once I kind of develop my class, I just no.
You can also do like the Dead Rising thing and literally restart the game state with this, but keep your characters.
Yeah, like the role system of this game ends up being the best part of this game, even though I feel like the gold requirements for even marginal advanced progression feeling punishing.
Even more than Might and Magic, this is a game that revolves around having cash more than leveling up.
Yeah.
I think is how I would put it.
And then on top of that, boy, let's say that you've gone down certain build paths. Town's not having everything.
Yeah, you don't get the Thieves Guild until the second town, so you can't promote your thief.
Which I get it, but also jumping back and forth between the second and the third town is not, let's say, an immediate thing that you can do.
No, you have to finish the opening dungeon before you can do the second town.
That trudge also from town 2 to town 1 kind of sucks.
It's fine. Eventually, you get a teleport spell.
You get a teleport spell.
Eventually.
They also give you a horse that you can ride.
There's a horse and a raft, know.
Oh, man, the vehicle sequence in this game.
You get vehicles. God, I love this game. Like, if we have not made it clear enough, this game is jank as fuck.
It has much jank.
This game is of a quality where it has so many ideas, but it was clearly a small team on a let's say maybe not a super expansive budget even for the late 90s. But by golly, it's swinging for the fences, and it's not as, it doesn't look as good as Wizardry 8. It's not it does not run as well as Wizardry 8, but it's got moxie.
Did either of you change the default controls for this game, or did you stick with the default?
I remapped the controls to have WASD.
Nah, I stuck with mouse controls the entire experience.
And and then basically tried to control it like a modern first-person shooter.
Also,
sort of.
as something that Braden pointed out while I was playing this game has a day-night cycle. And boy, howdy, is seeing anything.
It gets very dark.
Anything at night is just the worst. So you're just going to have to bump up the gamma to its maximum because yikes,
cast torchlight. And then eventually there's a spell called like sunlight that basically makes everything bright.
And the game's just trying to do it's just trying to do too much. I think one of the easiest signs that this game is doing too much is when, let's say you go to a guild or a shop, like your transactions and your options on your screen for your transactions kind of mutate or morph to suit the needs of where you're at. So like when you enter the armory, all of your buttons will go from what you previously saw when you were outside of town or in the overworld. It's weird to call it an overworld, but it's kind of an overworld, to be like sell, examine, identify. And it's just weird to see like the same UI, the same screen, basically just like bring things up that are completely different that you've never seen before. And in the case of a guild, when you get into that menu, that is restricted to you got to kind of like back out to the correct character and then have them interact with the person that will enter the guild, and then click the guild menu, and then that opens up a new menu on top of that.
It's real jank. I love it. But also,
and you can't just use by default. You can't.
It's
just
a
use
UI
the arrow
nightmare.
keys. Yeah, this UI feels very suited for the pseudo real-time combat, and then the minute that it's trying to do anything in these merchants or menus in the towns, it's just messy.
But Chris, what if I told you that there's paper doll inventories
on top,
but instead of a static 2D paper doll, it's literally rendering the armor and weapons on your character's 3D polygonal model,
which is very silly. When like I put an armored helmet on my character, and then I would see that
your Catman
on my Catman, and it looked like crap. It looked terrible.
Yeah. It's amazing.
It's good. Also, if you're casting magic, the particle effects for the magic spells, they're amazing. They're great. I love them. I love them so much.
This is a post 3D accelerated graphics card world.
Anything you want to say in terms of things that you encountered in the game, Jefferson?
I mean,
I think the biggest problem has to be like when you're exploring these dungeons and like you encounter those weird lever puzzles, and they're a little too obtuse for their own.
Yeah, in my mind, they're no worse than some of the more kludgy puzzles in something like Might and Magic 6. Honestly, like were also not my favorite thing in the universe. Like everything about the worst things about playing this game, like the super hotness aside, which is like a very novel, unique way to deal with this manner of combat. Most of it just comes down to, I think, just the 3D-ness of it. Like this just made me go, yeah, I appreciated this more when it was just Wizardry 6, I think. Because what this winds up feeling like most of the time is just a little clumsy, especially if you like, when you factor in like the level 1 physical combatants are all like kind of useless from the jump anyway. They just feel even more impotent for a while at the start of this game than they otherwise would have. But at the same time, again, I go back to the beginning of this game when I pointed, or this episode where I pointed at Etrian Odyssey, like that these are from the same tree and they're kind of related. And if you are able to allow for a certain amount of like approaching 25-year-old PC game jank, there is some stuff to enjoy here for sure. Like I've come away from my time with Wizards and Warriors like kind of surprised at how much I enjoyed the thing, despite its kind of enormous warts. I don't know.
It's just it's got some ideas that, like Braden said, end up feeling like an evolutionary dead end. Like No one's really made anything like this game ever. And
maybe for a good reason.
Yeah, maybe for a good reason. Because
But also, like, because boy, I at some point I will make one of you play Dungeon Lords to see what maybe there's a good reason why Bradley retired from the industry. But so this game is a platypus, right?
Yes.
Despite adhering to very traditional genre ideas and tropes, it is doing them in a way that is bizarre and unique and not always perfectly functional. But if you want your game where you control a blob of 6 characters in a RPG dungeon crawling format that is not like anything else,
and you have a tolerance for the, let's say, third like CRPG jank, you've got a tolerance for that.
This could be for you. And for the low entry price of $6, like, again, as a $50 new product, a week after Baldur's Gate 2, one of the touchstone RPGs of its era, a CRPG that was so good it damn near killed the entire genre just by existing and being so good. That's not a great comparison. As a $6 dungeon crawl experience that is literally available right now, that it's pretty good. Like it's pretty all right most of the time. And at its worst, it is still being somewhat charming. I've looked through, there's one semi-comprehensive game facts that was put together for this in 2001 that references a few bugs, and I encountered none of those. So I didn't even have that much of a buggy time. The worst thing I could say about it is by default it wasn't able to just run in a window for me, which if you're sick enough and play enough of these older PC games, there are all sorts of third-party wrappers that you could run to get around that too. So by Jove.
I feel like I don't know how much money, the amount of love and time and attention that they put into that modern GOG release, but this is a game that pleads the case why we must protect GOG. We have to protect good old games. We have to make sure that they're able to run and function, and we can just, because no, Steam and Epic are not paying a dime to have this game on their marketplace.
We've expressed our feelings on GOG's current redirection towards being the people who advertise the hentai games on their front page. But here is once again my proposal is now that GOG, remember back in the early 2000s before digital distribution, or the late aughts, before digital distribution had fully really come around, and it was hard to find old games, and I feel like most of the classics that people want are available in one form or another, with your Nulfs and whatnot being the big exceptions. But I'm here to say I want more weird bullshit on my digital distribution platform. I want to legally be able to pay money for let's say Descent to Undermountain, or the third game in the third game in the Lords of Midnight series. I want the weird shit. You've already grabbed all of the beloved classics. If a human being in current year wants to play System Shock 2, they can do that.
It's out there.
It's there.
Hey.
And that's why when this game came to GOG, it was like magic to me, because it felt like I had discovered a new old weird ass RPG that I hadn't touched before.
You breathed something to life that I've been afraid to ask you guys, and I'll ask you publicly in a public forum.
Yes.
Would you ever play Lords of Midnight?
Yeah.
Yeah, you would.
Those games are neat.
They're
doing
neat.
A lot for games from the 80s.
They're doing an awful lot for ZX Spectrum games, and I've played them, at least the first one. Anna, is that
Jeff, what if we
Spectrum
played the
emulator?
third one that came out in 1996?
Yeah,
Okay.
you see, that sounds terrible.
I mean, look, if I'm gonna play an 80s game, I would probably prefer to play Elite, but I don't think that's enough of an RPG to count, even though Elite is maybe the biggest game. But okay, we're gonna do that instead of Doom Dark's Revenge. Okay, well, technically that's a Lords of Midnight game.
Yeah, it's the-
Doom Dark's Revenge is Lords of
first
Midnight
sequel.
2.
Oh boy, yeah, okay, I can do that. Anyways, so time to rank Wizards and Warriors, or there's anything else we need to talk about?
I feel like we've summarized.
It's a
why
weird
this
thing.
This game became my weird stand-in for whenever I want to talk about a bullshit game that I like that no one has ever heard of.
I would say the weird thing is like there's one fairly fleshed out game FAQs. There is almost no documentation for this game. It's
Outside
been
of
lost.
weird forums filled with white supremacists.
Yeah, it's been lost to time almost, and I think that leads to most people probably needing to play this game blind, which is maybe not the best experience, especially when you get to that second serpent dungeon where it's just this big dungeon
It's very involved.
with a lot of involved puzzly stuff. And if you do things out of order, you're just going to have a bad time. So I don't know, watch a playthrough on YouTube and figure it out that way, because the idea of needing to figure this all out by just pulling the most obtuse context clues. Like, there's a point where you have to like take spider eggs and then crush them to make a concoction that you then put into an orifice to summon a snake god, so is that you can kill the evil giant snake lady in the serpent temple. Which
Yeah.
that's the only real boss fight I had in the game. It's cool. Well, I guess the mummy guy was a boss battle, but that was barely a boss battle. But yeah, it's a weird game. It might be one of the weirdest games we played this season whatever of Off the Deep End. Three.
All right, let's rank.
Okay.
For those of you who are not looking at the Bitly list for the hot spreadsheet we have, which is at bit.ly/OTDE rank, I will tell you the bottom of this list at present it consists of going downwards: Virtual Hiveline, Towers, Lord Banif's Deceit for the Game Boy Color, Secret of the Stars, Aiden Chronicles the First Mage, and the very bottom of the list, Unlimited Saga. The top of the list, working upwards, we have Grandia 2 by Game Arts, followed by Etrian Odyssey 4, Legend of the Titans by Atlas. At number 3, the 3 spot at Xenosaga Episode 1. Number 2, Suikoden the First. And our favorite game, Might and Magic 6, The Mandate of Heaven. And there it is, the best RPG ever. You heard it here. I'm gonna fall right to the middle of this list, which is currently... This seems like this was the middle of the list for a very long time. Was Bahamut Lagoon. Very, very mid.
Yep.
I think this game is better than Bahamut Lagoon.
I
think
so.
Quite a ways.
I actually agree.
I would say this game is better than Nox. It is better than Hybrid Heaven.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Sure.
better than Risen.
Sure.
Better than Biomotor Unitron.
I don't know. We're starting to get to the territory of these are games that I could complete. Okay, maybe it's better than Biomotor Unitron. It's got Moxie.
Well, now we're at a kerfluffle here, because I look at this next little block and I would say I think this is a superior product to The Legend of Dragoon, but I do not think it is a superior product to Megami Tensei the First, a game with which it has quite a bit in common.
It's probably telling that I would go as far as saying this is a top 10 game for us. But
What? No. I
this is a
fight
better
tooth
game
and
than
nail.
Ultima 4. Yeah.
No.
That's great.
No, I'm not. No.
This is a better game than Eternal Sonata.
No, absolutely not.
The dungeons in this game are so much better than Eternal Sonata.
Yeah, but
where you just walk to the right forever.
No. No,
The combat is better than Eternal Sonata?
No, the combat's like one of the best parts of Eternal Sonata. It's the time-based systems, and you have to learn each character's mini games. Like, there's so much more variety.
Okay, ZP.
Eternal Sonata brings so much more to the table than this game.
ZP, how do you feel about this game vis-a-vis Dragon Age 2?
Okay, now I feel like we can have a discussion. Honestly, I don't know.
I think this game is better than Dragon Age 2.
Yeah, because it sounds like Braden knows, and I'm considering it.
All right, I'll go ahead and say this is a better game than Dragon Age 2.
Would you say that this would go above Spike Lee's NBA 2K16?
See, and this is the part where I have to confess, like, I like basketball games more than either of you. I play them semi-frequently.
You play them for realsies, not as a goof.
For realsies, not for a goof. I usually
you love them microtransactions
every other year, or when the game is supposedly reviewing well. But
you bought that Black Mamba edition.
Playing an NBA 2K game is, to me, more coherent than anything that I experienced in Wizardry.
Okay, so as a grand compromise, what if it went between Dragon Age 2 and NBA 2K16?
I fully support this endeavor.
Because I think this has to go above Legend of Dragoon, because I think that is an unpleasant game. And the more things I can put above that, the happier I am. And Dragon Age 2, I think that game is probably a more approachable game for 99% of the people on planet Earth.
But guess what? We're not normal people.
We're not normal, and that game really bummed me out at the ending. Whereas this game, I never saw the ending, so I didn't get the chance. Okay, that's where it's going to go then. It is the new number 15 on the list, Wizards and Warriors, by Heuristic Park. I'm just going to type this out. This is for the personal computer, the IBM compatible.
And I'm responsible for this.
This is
because Anthem made me sad, so I wanted to pick a game I would enjoy.
This is a Braden game. Congratulations to DW Bradley. You finally made it onto the list.
Mr. Bradley, if you're listening to this, please email in. I would love to talk to you about the making of this game and Dungeon Lords and the canceled sequel to Dungeon Lords.
But the special editions got released, Braden.
And then there's the Steam version. There are 3 different versions of Dungeon Lords with completely different approaches to skill trees and character progression and loot. They reworked that game twice.
And I think the third rework is the only version of that game.
That's the one on Steam, yes.
Yeah.
Did that game ever get a console version?
No.
Nor should it have.
No console child would ever. They would see that and their face would melt.
It feels like a game that should have wound up on the Xbox, like the Xbox.
The Xbox 360, yeah, I could see it.
Okay. That's it. As mentioned, there will be another episode forthcoming very soon. Stay tuned. Maybe around the solstice. Maybe something will drop. Who can say? And then the next time we hear us after that will be the GOTY celebration for the rest of Deep Listens. And then I guess it's not totally set in stone if we're going to have a spin-off off the deep end, one of those, or if we're going to roll it up with the main show. But it will be some iteration of that. You'll either hear us once or twice talking about a wrap up. And that's the holiday plans. Trying to lighten the load, trying to hang out with friends and family and not spend hours sitting in offices talking in microphones.
Joke's on you, Jeff. This is what I do for fun.
Oh, shit.
Oh, damn it.
I just left my family and I don't want to talk to them for another year.
I have to. It's funny. I'm going to Florida in about a month now to go see my family.
Yeah. Those Star Wars rides at Hollywood Studios are very cool.
We will not be going to that part of Florida.
The fried chicken joints in Florida are very good. Just go to the places that there are multiple fast food chains over there in the southeast that are nothing but chicken tenders. And boy howdy, they make some good chicken tendos.
It's been a while since I've been inside of a Waffle House.
Yeah.
I intend
Punch
to
a man in a Waffle House, Jeff.
Yeah. Punch myself in a Waffle House.
All right, so you said that we need to roll a fan pick. What was it?
Are we doing fan pick or
do we want to? Yeah, do we want to forecast the fan pick for the future? It's going to be a minute, but we will get to it.
Yeah, it's going to be like a month.
Okay,
let's roll for it.
I'm gonna roll. By the way, if you feel like you have are entitled to a fan pick and we have not gotten to that,
message us on the Discord.
Yes, we would love to ensure that your fan request is in the mail. As it is, I'm gonna run this little spinner or whatever. There's a thing, the name of which is now gone from my head. Random.org. That's what it is. 8, 9, 10. There's 10 entries on here. Yeah, there's definitely some people that have joined that have not submitted to this. Okay, and go. Okay, okay. This is gonna be popular. Props to Brazil. We're going to be playing...
God damn it!
It's Fear and Hunger time, baby. Speaking of dungeon crawlers.
Oh, God.
I think
crawling around and something.
So yes.
Like games that hate you.
It's a game that looks like meat.
And wants to treat you like meat.
Yeah, punch meat. Okay. So that will be it. That's what's going to happen now.
Fear and Hunger. Finally, playing a video game on this here podcast that requires you to turn off turn on the Show Me Everything filters on Steam.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've looked at raw Steam.
Courtesy of Zeto, Brazil,
who has posted multiple pictures of this game, which needed to be censored.
Yeah. Every time I see an image
but
from
this video game is courtesy of Finland.
It all comes together.
Yeah.
There's an incredible video essay by Super Eyepatch Wolf about this game that I strongly recommend. Anyone who joins us, you watch, including my fellow podcast members here, watch that video.
I can't believe Pete put Genealogy of the Holy War on this list.
We badgered him too.
I know, and I love it. I love that that's his shot. I would have never in 1,000 years. He's a Secret Stones or Sacred Stones deviant. So anyway. Okay. That's it. I'm pulling the parachute. We are bailing out of this show. We will all probably see you around somewhere, I guess. Thanks. Oh, there's a script, right? Let's be nice and formal. Thanks for tuning into this installment of Off the Deep End. Send any and all questions to inquiries@deep.lol or bug us on the Discord, and you can at us individually on there. That can be at Arbitrary Water, at Zombie Pie, or at whatever my Discord name is. I think it's Electric Viking. Yes, it is. As mentioned, if you'd like to help support this show, patreon.com/deeplistens. Any dollar amount will get you into that Discord where you can just yell at us in real time. $3 gets your game up on the list. We will draw from it. The game has to be an RPG. What are RPGs? You tell us. Special shout out to the artist known as SuperSex420 for providing us with the podcast Halfway. This and other great tracks by SuperSex420 are available on Bandcamp.com. For now, see you next time, and remember, there's no such thing as cheating in a single-player game as long as you buy it for $5.99 on GOG. Bye.
Bye.